Hi, everybody. It's Cali Yost, and it's time for another Tweak It Expert Inspiration interview. You know, every now and then I like to introduce you to the wonderful minds who shared their Get Started tips in my book, Tweak It. It's actually one of my favorite parts of the book, and today I'm happy to have with me Maggie Jackson, who shared her terrific, simple Get Started advice to manage the distraction of technology in our life. So Maggie, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Well, thanks for being here. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing?
Sure. I come from a journalism background. I'm a former columnist with the Boston Globe, and have been writing about work-life balance for a long time, and now I write about technology's impact on our lives, and my most recent book is called Distracted.
Well, Maggie, you know that Distracted had a big impact on me, actually. When I read Distracted, I said in a blog post I did for Fast Company, it felt the way people must have responded to Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, right? That's how I felt. I had never given it thought before, and since I read your book, which came out when? 4 years ago?
Yes, yeah, about that.
I have been so mindful of the impact of technology and how we have to manage it. So tell me, why do we have to create small pockets of time in our busy everyday work-life fit for focus and to manage the distraction?
Sure, Callie, I think it's more important than ever, and I think there are a couple of reasons that are very pressing why we need to manage this and tweak it. First of all, there's reactivity. You know, we're so connected, and yet the connectivity allows us to be diffused, and that forces us to be reacting all the time, to respond, to react, to put out fires. And I think we need to, step back and get the overarching picture sometimes, and that calls for management of your attention and your technology. And secondly, I think that we're losing often in this hopscotching way of life integrity of the moment. So again, in order to go deeply, you need whole moments. Not all the time, but people switch tasks on average every 3 minutes, and CEOs report that they think 3 to 4% of their weeks. Wow. That's tremendous, amazing. So we need to wrestle with this.
Interesting. And you never hear about it. It seems like it should be something we're talking about all the time, and there's so little attention paid to it. That's why I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. Where do people get stuck, Maggie? It all makes great sense when you say it, and I even know your work. We're friends. I'm aware, and I still struggle. But where do people really get stuck?
Well, I think they get stuck in two ways. First of all, the technologies have infiltrated our lives. I mean, they're basically cognitive prosthetics. They're appendages, there are teddy bears. So we're on them all the time. And so that makes these technologies kind of invisible to us. We have to step back and see the technology for what it is, walk around it, ask questions once in a while. Secondly, I think that busyness often also kind of blends into the wallpaper of life, if you will. There are many philosophical and spiritual traditions that actually found or that we're talking about busyness and hyper busyness, particularly as a way of skirting the difficulties in life. So hyper busyness was actually inefficient, according to a lot of historic human traditions, and that's something to think about.
It's interesting. You think about something like the Sabbath, right, where people used to take that seventh day and just not do anything. And we really lost track of those cultural built-in moments of focus and reflection. And technology, with all of its wonderful benefits, really does require a level of deliberate, thoughtful management that you point out, and I would love to give people some tips to get started. In the book, you give some great examples of what people can do. My favorite is the guy who put his phone in the trunk of his car so he wasn't tempted to text at every light. So again, doesn't seem like a big deal, but can make a big difference. What can we do to get started?
Sure, there's so much we can do, Kelly, and I think we can start with these little tiny, pieces, your tweak its, and it seems like a big issue, but it can be broken into parts of our day. So one of the things I'd suggest would be pause points. Take a moment to breathe. Take a moment when you're transitioning between a meeting or a topic or even two big thoughts or two projects. I know a doctor who pauses before he enters the room of another patient, and he's found that incredibly invigorating. So just these moments called pause points are really helpful. Another tiny suggestion I've had is taking the clock off of your computer. That can be done easily. You can put it on, put it off, but we're so wedded to clock time, and yet we're trying to live 24/7. And so it's a kind of a losing battle in a lot of ways to keep up with the schedules. Turn off that clock when you do want to have focused moments, and you'll find yourself getting into the integrity of the moment and not just thinking about the next interruption that's coming along. So those are a couple suggestions. There's so many.
Those are great. Those are great. And if people go to the tweakittogether.com site, you actually have a bonus tweak that did not get in the book because there were so many great pieces of so many get started tips you offered that in the book, on the site, go to your books. There's so much people can do. So Maggie, how do you manage your everyday work-life fit? What small actions have meaningful impact for you?
Sure. Well, I definitely take advantage of the pause points. And I also, I basically am trying to be more deliberate and more intentional about how I use my time. And again, I let myself sort of drift in thought. I'm not afraid to daydream. I'm not afraid to turn it all off at some point. So I'm constantly trying to think about how to manage particularly different forms of attention. And just to refresh or to educate your listeners about attention for a second, it's all in my book, but there are three different kinds. There's focus, which is the spotlight of your mind. There's awareness, which is that wider wakefulness of your total surroundings. And then there's executive attention, the symphony conductor of the mind. And it's really important to be aware of what kind of attention you want to be using at any one time, even though they kind of blend and you'll be using different types unconsciously. But when you really need to focus, make the environment work for you rather than working against it. Create an environment for that hour or half a day that's focused. That's why people still love to go on retreats, after all. They're managing, in a collective way, their attentional capabilities. And when I'm in a new space, when I'm writing or interviewing, or if I'm doing something new, I will tune up my awareness. I might want to focus on a conversation at a certain point, but at other points in time, I want to soak in everything that's going on around me. That's a great thing for marketing people to do when they're in a crowd or with, consumers. Just don't use your pinpoint awareness. Look at the backdrop and the big picture and the landscape at certain points, and you'll be amazed at what more you see.
So interesting. I have to say, Maggie, I could talk to you all day. I encourage everybody to look into Maggie's work, read her books, and you will really look at the world very, very differently. So Maggie, tell us where we can find out more about you and also about your exciting new project that you're working on.
Yes, well, you can find out about me and my books and buy them or see past writings on my website, www.maggie-jackson.com, or just Google Maggie Jackson or Distracted, and you'll find me. I'm working on a terrifically exciting new book. Will be out in a year or so on the reflective mind, on different states of slow, considered thought. Because once we get to the doorstep of focus or executive attention, once we get to that point when we're not fragmented, we're not hijacked by what's going on around us, then what do we do with it? How can we craft thought? The making of thought is, I think, the question for this decade. And through tweaking it and through thinking about the science of attention, I think we can get ourselves to be better thinkers. And this new book will show us the practice of that.
So exciting. You once said something to me, and okay, if I'm quoting you incorrectly, please set me straight. But you said that in the today's world and in the future, the people who will add value are not the people who can get all of the information because we have so much information at our fingertips. It's the people who can synthesize and understand what is the message and the themes, what are the messages and the themes within the information. And that requires all of the strategies and deliberate steps that you're encouraging us to make part of our everyday. So, did I quote you correctly?
Yeah, no, it's more important than ever. And I'll leave you with one tiny thought from Albert Einstein, who said that, discovering a new theory, whether it's relativity or whatnot, is not like tearing down a barn, the old barn, and building a skyscraper. He actually said that it's like climbing a mountain. Every step of the way, he had to look back, look forward, but it was just step by step that he was able to create the brilliant ideas that he did. So that it speaks to the idea of synthesizing, building, archaeological thinking, all of those I think are really, really important. What's most important is that we know how to handle our minds before we know how to handle gadgets.
And we have to be deliberate about it, and we have to make it part of our everyday thoughtful management of the way we live and work. And for your advice on how to do that, I am most grateful. Thank you, Maggie Jackson, for spending time with me today. I appreciate it. Everyone, if you want to learn more about Maggie, she told you where to go to find her directly, or you can go to the tweakittogether.com site to her page. There's a direct link to her site, as well as I mentioned, her bonus tweak. Maggie, thanks so much.
Thanks, Callie, and thanks for all the work you're doing.
Remember, if you want to make what matters to you happen every day, just tweak it.